Hello and welcome back to the Cash and Commitment podcast with myself, Yinka.
And Veronia.
And let's get straight into it once again. All right, babe. What are we talking about today?
So we are answering I don't want to say awkward question, but I think it's something that people do think about a lot. And the question is whether you should be lending money to friends and or family. So I think it might be good to talk about our own personal experiences first, and then we can kind of answer the question in terms of whether we would actually lend money to them.
Okay, sounds good. Well, you can start. Ladies first.
Okay, so when it comes to my own personal experiences, I feel like lending money tends to change the dynamic of your relationship. So in the past, if I've lent money to friends and actually, I don't even think, I'm not sure if I've ever lent money to friends. It's more so been family. It's definitely been family. And sometimes, like, if they don't pay you back on time, that's when it starts to get awkward because obviously you're seeing them because they're family. So you'll be asking, okay, like, are you gonna pay the money back? So for example, with my sister, she will tend to ask to borrow money from me. And this is my younger sister. So I don't necessarily see it as me lending the money. I see it as I know that I'm going to give her the money, but I'm not actually going to expect it back. But if she does give it back to me, then that's a bonus. Because when I did lend her money, she did not pay me back for ages. Like, she didn't pay me back for a very long time. And had I actually given her money that I needed back, I think that would have been really awkward. Like, I'll make fun of her where I'll just be like, oh, have you got my money? Yeah, where's my money? But like for me, because I don't need the money back, I'm not too bothered. But if it was money that I genuinely needed and she hadn't paid me back, I think that would have been very, very awkward.
Yeah.
Have you got any personal experiences?
Yeah, probably similar to yours in terms of it being quite difficult to lend money and manage expectations. So the people in my family will ask for money for specific necessities. So for me, I already know that they're not asking for money just because for the sake of asking for money. So I know that if I've got money to give to them, then it's not going to be going to something that isn't required at that moment in time. So for me personally, I'm always of the thought of if I have the money to give, then I will give it. I don't say lend because lending money to family is quite difficult. As you said already, it can compromise relationships, it can affect relationships, and there's always that thought in the back of your mind of, is this person going to pay me back? Or when is this person going to pay me back? Because as we all know with family, there's no hard deadlines. You can try and set deadlines. For most people, they try and set deadlines, but realistically, it's a soft deadline. So that deadline can come and go, and that person could still be only owing you money. So it's a difficult one, especially because it's family. I think if it's friends, if it's people that aren't you don't consider family, it can be a lot easier because you can set those boundaries and set.
Do you think it's easier?
I think it's easier. I think it's easier for you to set those boundaries to say, okay, I'm giving you this amount of money. I need it back by this date. And because your relationship isn't as close as family members is, I think it's easier for that person to take it a bit more seriously and be like, okay, cool. I owe you by this date, so I'm going to pay you back by this date. With my friends anyway. So
See, I think it's harder. And the only reason why I say that is based on what I was talking about before, how it will change the dynamic of your relationship. So I feel like if I lend money to a really close friend, what happens if they don't pay me back? Like, what happens if they genuinely can't pay me back for whatever reason? If they've maybe spent the money somewhere else, or they've maybe, I don't know, maybe they forget.
Yeah.
How does that then change the relationship? Because then I'm going to be thinking, oh, I can't trust you with money moving forward. So it's not something. So if you ask to borrow money from me again, would I lend it to you again? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's tough because it affects everything else as well after that.
Yeah,
not just a chat about money or borrowing money or giving money back or whatever. It affects the whole dynamic of the relationship because you're holding onto something in your heart,
exactly.
and that can affect how you interact on a surface level basis as well. So it's quite difficult.
Yeah, that's why I think it's harder then, because
No,
just because of the way it can change your relationship so drastically.
true, but I think that's harder for family rather than friends because I feel like friends can take it a bit more seriously.
Yeah, I
But
agree
I'm
with
just
that.
talking about my personal experience because with my friends, I know that if I lend them money and I tell them I need it back by a certain date, then if they can't pay it back by that date, my friends will let me know they can't pay it back by this date, or
Mm.
they'll come up with some form of a plan to actually pay it back, whether that's a payment plan or whatever. But when it comes to family, that date can come and go, and that's it. You won't hear from it again.
Yeah.
So, like even like from my personal experience with my parents, I've lent quite a bit of money at different points in my life, and I'm never a person to go up to someone and remind them. Well,
No, I do that with
I
my
say that
sister.
now. No. I say that now. When I was younger, I probably would try and remind them that okay, yeah, you need to pay this back. But like as I got older, I'm never a person to go and remind someone that you owe me money because it shouldn't be my responsibility to tell you or remind you that you borrowed this amount of money and you need to pay it back.
Mm.
So for me personally, I don't have that confrontation with um my parents about that or any other family members that I would have borrowed money to.
Okay, that's fair enough. So when it comes to my sister, for example, what I remind her is because I'm trying to teach her a lesson. Because I'm always saying, like, if I was an actual creditor and you didn't pay me back, you would owe me a lot of money. So that's the reason why I remind her. In terms of other family members, again, I think I have a similar opinion where potentially I wouldn't really confront them because I would expect them to have the responsibility to pay me back or to remember. But what happens like if your parents don't pay you back? Would you remind them or would you just leave it?
I think the older I got, the more I left it, but that's probably because of two reasons. The older I got, the more money I made. The older I got, the more mature I became with lending or gifting money. So I no longer thought of money as being lended to people,
Mm.
but more as gifting it to them in this thought of if I give you this money, I'm not necessarily expecting it back. So I'm not relying on that money to come back to me. If it comes back, as you said before, it's a bonus, it's great. But if it doesn't, then is what it is.
Yeah, fair enough. So I want to take it back to, I think we were probably, I want to say 22, 23 years old. And I mentioned this in an earlier episode where obviously my car broke down. I didn't have money. I called my mum up. She couldn't transfer me money at the time. So I called you up asking to borrow money from you. Now, I wasn't family at that time because we weren't even engaged. We were basically dating or courting.
Mm.
So I, first of all, because you don't really remember that, but I remember it.
I remember it now.
Okay, so you remember it.
Yeah.
So did you think that, did you have the idea that you were gifting me that money or
Oh
were
no.
you or were you lending it to me?
Definitely lending it. I think so. This brings on another point. So at that time, it was from my overdraft. I'm pretty sure.
See, you said this, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it was from your
Why
overdraft
not?
because you were doing your postgrads at the time.
22.
Yeah, 22, 23.
I would be doing 20. I gave you money when I was 22, 23.
Yeah, because
For what?
I was working at that time
Yeah. What did I give you money for?
for my car because it was at the garage.
No, it wasn't that age. We were probably 21. We were maybe
Okay.
fresh out of uni.
Okay, then fair enough.
Yeah, we are maybe fresh out of
Yeah, but
uni.
I know I was definitely working at the
So it
time.
was definitely my overdraft. If you were that
Okay,
age, it
fair
was
enough.
definitely my
Fair
overdraft.
enough.
So yeah. So the reason why it was definitely lending money is because it was my overdraft money, and also it was a few hundred, I think. So it was a significant amount of all
Yeah,
the money that I had. So
it was like 200.
yeah, so it was a significant amount of money, or significant amount of the money that I had. So yes, it was definitely lending.
Mm.
and there was no doubt that you were going to pay me back. I think the only thing that was the issue was that your mum couldn't give you that money at that time.
Yeah. So had I told you then that I couldn't pay you back, how do you think our relationship would have changed? Or do you think our relationship would
I
have
wouldn't have
changed?
given you the money. Right?
No, but no, because say you gave, like, obviously you at that time, because I
Yeah.
was in the garage, you transferred me the money.
Oh, okay.
So had I, like, let's say that the following week
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, "Oh, Yinka, like, I'm so sorry, I don't think I'm gonna be able to pay you back." Do you think that the dynamic of our relationship would have changed?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
How?
As I said, I'm gonna hold on to some kind of ill feeling in my heart because it was assumed, and that probably would have been the issue. It was assumed that I'm helping you out of a tough spot, but also at the same time, this money is gonna come back to me quite quickly because, in essence, the only reason you couldn't pay that bill was because your mum couldn't send you the money at that point in time. Now, this is all assumptions, right? So we didn't actually make this discussion that I'd get this money back at this point in time. I don't think so.
No.
So yeah, I was just assuming that, and thankfully it happened that way. But if it didn't happen that way, then it's another story because, as I said, it's a huge chunk of my money that wasn't even my money because it was overdraft money at that time. So it's tough. It's really, really tough. It definitely would have changed our relationship. I think I would have felt away. Yeah, I definitely would have felt away.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of, like, the I don't want to say dangers, but when it comes to especially lending to friends, that's where I go back to. I actually think it's quite difficult
Yeah.
to do it because if something happens where maybe you're not able to keep to your word, that changes the relationship drastically.
For sure, for
Or
sure.
it's kind of like if, for example, because I remember one of my friends telling me this, where it wasn't really, it's not specifically lending money, but for example, like if you're planning to go on holiday with your friends and they're like, yeah, like we're all gonna go on holiday, and they tell you, oh, I've not got money to pay the deposit, can you pay for me? You then pay
No, you're setting yourself up
for
there,
the
man.
both of, and this actually happened to one of my friends. I remember her telling me she paid for the both of them, and then the friend said, "Oh, I can't come anymore."
That's bad, man.
Doesn't that check? It's like it's not lending, but like it's quite. I think it's quite similar, right? In
Yeah, yeah.
terms of you've given me your word that you're coming on holiday, so I'm effectively I am kind of lending the money because I'm paying the deposit for both of us,
Yeah,
and you're now telling me you can't go on holiday.
yeah. Look, circumstances happen, right? But it's bad mind if he don't pay that deposit back to
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
It's really bad. But yeah, I hear what you're saying for sure.
So I think when it comes, for me personally, I wouldn't lend to friends.
Hmm.
I wouldn't even lend to family. I would gift to family.
Yeah.
But I think it's much more difficult because at least I feel like with family, like at the end of the day, they're your family.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change that anyway. So I don't know. I feel like I would just kind of let it go and I'd just be like, okay, cool. But I don't know. I feel like if it was a friend, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it'd be, I just feel like the relationship would change, in my opinion,
Okay.
if they didn't pay you back, if you lent the money and you pay them back. But I think my stance is I just wouldn't even go into that. Like I don't think I would even really have that conversation.
Okay. But then for you, what's the difference between lending and gifting the money to a friend, for example?
I've not been in the situation where a friend has come to me and said, I really need money. I think if that did happen, I would just gift them the money and I would not expect anything. Even if they ask, like, oh, I want to pay you back, I will literally just tell them, no, this is a gift from me. Which, to be fair, is the same with family. But I don't know. There's just something with, like, when you're talking about money with friendships, I just think it's just a bit different compared to family. I don't know why, but it just feels a bit different. Is it the same for you? Like, would you just view it as the same?
Similar. I think my relationship with money is quite different anyway. So I've thought about this, and I know that my relationship with money is not common. It's quite uncommon because as a Christian, I believe everything that I need is given to me
Mm,
by God. So that includes money. So I've never really thought that the money in itself belongs to me fully. I'm just a
mm,
steward of it. So I always knew that money comes and money goes, right? So even if I give some money up, I will get money back in another way, whether that would
mm-hmm.
be through working or any other roundabout way as well. That sounds very illegal, doesn't it? Working, working, or someone gives me money too. So that's why giving money or lending money to people hasn't been an issue for me. So
Mm,
even like with family, if especially when family members haven't returned the money that they borrowed the first time but are asking for even more, it hasn't been too much of an issue for me because of my relationship and my thoughts about money anyway. As we got married, we also talked about what we're gonna do if a family member asks us for money, and
yeah.
we agreed that the money that we give, or yeah, the money that we give to the family member is going to be an amount that we're comfortable giving and not receiving back.
Mm,
If it comes back, great. But in essence, if it doesn't, then it's fine. And I do that personally as well. If someone asks me for money, then it's got to be something that I'm willing to give away and not get back.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely have the same mindset as you, which is why I said, like, if a friend was like literally in need and was like, I need to borrow some money, I wouldn't be like, okay, but make sure you pay me back.
Yeah.
I just gift it because I'm like, okay, this is like, that's fine, that's not a problem. But I think it still changes the dynamic of the relationship, though, if more so probably for the other person, though,
Yeah.
because I feel like if I was in their shoes, I would be feeling like, oh, they've given me this money, but I feel like I do need to pay it back. And then maybe I might feel a bit indifferent to
Mm.
the person. So I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think um definitely in terms of the difference between lending and gifting. Obviously with gifting, you just don't assume that you get the money back, and you just give the money away and you have no problems. If they pay you back, then sure, fine, bonus. But if they don't, they don't. Whereas when you're actually lending money to someone, you are expecting that money back,
Mm.
in my opinion. So I think, like, okay, whether it's friends or family, yes, it will be gifting, but I think personally, I think for me, when it comes to friends, that sometimes it can change the dynamic of the relationship. Maybe not from your end, from the person that's gifting the money, but I feel like from the other person's perspective, I feel like they may feel, I don't know, a bit weird. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just weird.
But how about boundaries? What boundaries do you have actually for lending or gifting money? Or what advice would you give to someone that's in a situation where they have a family member or a friend that needs money
Mm.
and is requesting it from them? What boundaries do you think should be set in place? Or what's good boundaries that you would set in place?
So for me, from again, I don't think I would see it as lending. I would see it as gifting. But also at the same time, I think you also need to look at your own financial situation
Mm-hmm.
as well, because I know where some people have come to me where they've said, oh, I lent money, this amount of money to family, and it's landed me in debt.
Yeah.
And so they've now got to a point where their family member maybe hasn't given them the money back, and then they're also in debt. So they've got the extra interest that they now have to pay, where it then makes it much more difficult for them to be in a solid financial position. So for me, and I think again, we had this conversation when we were married where we said if we're going to give money, it is going to be money that we can afford to give,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to get to a point where, you know, family or friends need this amount of money, but then you're almost putting yourself in a bad financial situation.
Yeah.
Because if that happens, then how can you then also help people as well? You can't help people without helping yourself. And I don't think it's to be selfish to be like, oh no, I'm not going to give any money at all. Definitely not saying that, because I think we still would happily give money. But I think it's making sure you are also at the point where you can still be able to give back to others.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it to the point where you become bankrupt, then, how would you help people? It's kind of like being on an airplane where they tell you to put on your gas mask before you put on your kid's gas mask, because
Oxygen mask. Sorry.
your oxygen mask, sorry, your oxygen mask,
Yeah.
you've got to put it on first so that you can then be able to help others, so you can be able to help your children, for example.
Yeah.
I think the same thing happens with finances, is you've got to make sure you're also in a good situation and not hoard your money,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure you're in a good financial situation where you can then also gift others as well. What are your thoughts?
I think that sounds good. We're on the same page with that, in terms of the money that you're borrowing shouldn't put you in.
That you're lending. If you want to come to me with my oxygen
Yeah, but that's literally
gas mask.
it's a synonym. But anyway, the money that you're lending is not affecting your finances detrimentally,
That was
then
the word.
oh, you're welcome. Detrimentally, then that's fine. But I'm also on the fence on that as well, because there's been some situations where, for example, someone's in dire need of some money, and it may affect my financial goals. Not decimate it, but it may affect it, and it may mean that I need to add a few more months to my timeline of reaching my goal.
But that's why I was talking about, is it going to leave you in a bad financial situation? Because if it's just going to affect your goals maybe by a couple of months, if it might push your financial goals by a couple of months, 100%. And if you feel like God is speaking to you, then 100%. But I think where I was going is, if it's going to, for example, bankrupt you or put you in a really bad financial position, then it might be something that, of course, you probably need to pray about as well. But also you need to potentially think twice about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
I think another thing to actually speak about is being clear with the person you're lending to what your expectations are. Because I think a lot of us just assume that these expectations or our preferences are going to be met, but a lot of the time we just don't communicate it. And because of that, when it comes to the time of returning money, if it doesn't happen at that time or in a way that you'd like it to happen, we as a lender feel very hard done by. So as you're lending money, if and where this is possible, just be clear with whether you want the money back or not, why it's important for you to have that money back. Now, you could just say because this is your money, but if you can attach a reason to it, then that borrower is going to have something to refer to when it comes down to returning that money to you. And if you want to set a deadline with them, then set a clear deadline with them and tell them why that deadline is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So if you can do that as well, I think that will be a good boundary to set, to kind of set yourself up best as a lender to hopefully see a return of your money if that is something that you want to do. But if you can gift it as well, it makes psychologically, it makes it a whole lot easier, and it will probably save a lot of your friendships.
Yep, definitely. I think, in summary, we would prefer to just gift the money, and gift money that is affordable to us, but also, I think, from a faith perspective as well, once we've taken it to God in prayer, then, however we feel like God wants us to gift, we'll gift. But if there's a situation where you maybe can't give the money and you have to lend the money, then definitely setting up those boundaries and those expectations are important.
Yeah. How about from a borrower's perspective? Because we've spoken a lot about from the lender's perspective. From a borrower's perspective, because I don't think I've been in a position. Let me think back.
Have you ever? That's what I was even going to ask. That have you actually ever borrowed money? Because I know I have.
I borrowed money.
I don't think I've ever really. The only friend
Hmm.
I've probably borrowed money from is you,
Friend.
and you weren't even my friend. Well, I guess you were my f-
Friend.
friend.
That's what my dad would say. I know. I may be wrong here. Someone might call me out on this, but I don't think I've borrowed money from someone before.
Maybe I've borrowed from like tried to borrow from a friend in school. I feel like maybe I've done that,
Mm,
but mine's mainly been family. I would say.
yeah, but from a borrower's perspective, because all right. So when you were borrowing, what was your feelings, your emotions? What was your mental state at that time? Because I imagine, and I can only imagine that it's a difficult thing to do.
Yes, which is why I think I was so when I was talking about earlier from the borrower's perspective, that will probably change their relationship. I think I'm talking about myself
Hmm.
and remembering like when I borrowed money from you, for example, I knew I had to pay you back. And there was almost this pressure because I was like, yeah, he's given me money. He's not family. I'm not gonna just, take advantage and not pay him back. Like I need to make sure he's paid back. So I feel like there's maybe a bit more added pressure compared to maybe family.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like there will probably be some pressure if, for example, like I had asked my mum in the past for money. I feel like there's some pressure, but it's not as much compared to family. No, compared to friends. Because I feel like with family, you know, again, you can't choose your family, so I feel like they would just have to forgive me anyway. So yeah, I think that's where I was coming from before, because I don't know, when I've borrowed money, I've also felt guilty at times
Mm,
as well.
for sure. For sure. But how about how about if you're dealing with a serial borrower? That's a hard word to say. A serial borrower. How about if you're dealing with them? Someone that keeps asking for
Oh,
money,
that's another conversation, babe, because
money and money and money. Because like it can happen in family
yes,
situations, but it can also happen. We got family back home in Africa. It can also happen in those situations as well. And
yeah,
obviously, we're in a more fortunate and privileged position than some people back there, only by the grace of God. But
mm,
also at the same time, it's not our responsibility to take care of our whole community back home or be the financial bank for your family member that lives here with you that isn't
mm,
money savvy or taking control of their finances.
yeah. I think you have to know the person that is asking for that money, because again, there is the question on you just giving them money every single time, is that actually helping their situation? So if, for example, like I had, I don't know, a cousin who was always asking me for money, in my heart I could be like, oh yeah, I just want to gift them, I just want to be able to just give them money. But am I enabling them to then also continue to do what they were doing before? If, for example, they continuously would go into debt and spend all of their money, is that helpful for me to continue gifting them
Hmm.
the money? Or should I be doing something else? Should I be trying to help them in another way that doesn't necessarily mean I'm transferring money to their bank account?
Yeah.
I think you'd have to kind of know the person and where they're coming from.
And also whether they're willing to make a change.
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
yeah, you got some African parents that feel like
Oh
they
yeah.
must, they're now, what's the word? Eating the fruit of their labor in terms of you kids will now look after their parents. And sometimes that's at the detriment of the kids' futures
Yeah.
as they start to build families or their own families and things of that nature. But anyway, that's a topic in itself, to be totally honest with you.
And it's a touchy subject as
And it's a
well.
touchy
So
subject, but that's fine. I'm happy to talk about touchy subjects.
yeah, we can talk about it in a future video.
Yeah,
Video episode.
episode. Yeah, let us know if you want to talk about that or delve into that a bit further.
Yeah.
But I think we've been yapping for a little while now.
Yeah.
So shall we round it up?
Yes, we shall. So, if you did like this episode, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you are listening to any of the audio devices like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to follow us on there. And you can also leave us a review. And on YouTube, let us know in the comments as well. Do you typically lend to family and friends, or would you prefer to just gift money to them? Let us know your thoughts. And of course, if you ever want further support when it comes to managing your finances, we also offer one-on-one coaching. So you can either be coached by myself, or if you would like couples coaching, that's also an option where you could potentially be coached by Yinka. You can book a call in the description to find out more. So I think we're going to leave it there.
Hmm.
Any last thoughts, words, encouragement?
Give money where you can, man. Honestly, it will save you a lot of headache in the future.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yep. Peace and love.
Bye.